Good evening, everyone.
How are you?
Baruch Hashem, thank you. Uh,
We are still on the tour.
yeah, so we were talking about the issue of this kind of breadcrumbs that were broken up and cooked. So regarding this, says Bet Yosef here, "Udvarav kesotrin elu et elu." So he says there's a contradiction here. שבתחילה כתב דבאחד בטיבותא דלהווה בהו, דהיינו יש בהם כזית, אף על פי שנשתנה צורתה. So first, right, he says that we mentioned yesterday two conditions regarding this issue. One is that the size of kazait, if it has that size. And then the other issue is the way it looks, the way it appears. Those are the two things that we mentioned. So he's telling you that even though they have a kazait, nevertheless, right, now it appears different, or not, so he says, So it's one or the other, he says, right? This rabbi is telling you. Either that it has kazite, or it still looks like bread. So either way, he says, we will bless on that hamotzi. And then afterwards he writes, Bechada l'reuta, l'have behu, dainu, en b'hem kazait, afa pished, lo nishtan surata. Right? So, in other words, the Bet Yosef is here pointing out the discrepancy here in this piece that we read. That on the one hand, in the beginning, it seems like he writes that you need two conditions, one or the other. You don't need both. But then afterwards, he seems to write a different way, which is that the real main issue here is regarding the size, if it has kazite or not. But the issue of whether it looks like bread or not, it's not really relevant. So contradicts one place the other. Discrepancy going on. That's what he's saying. Bet Yosef. Okay, and then he says. So he says there's one rabbi who's like descended from the Rambam. Okay, one of his descendants. He answers regarding this issue. He tries to reconcile, the words of the Rambam. Shemash katav o she'avra tzurat pat. פירושה אם עברה כי כבר נמצא בכתוב או במקום אם או נודע כי שור נגחו או הודע אליו דחתתו והרב הגדול מהרב יוסף פסי כתב שיש לחלק. Okay, so first let's get that piece, right? So this descendant of the Rambam is writing here, explaining the words of the Rambam. So what is he saying? So he says that which the Rambam said, that if now the bread looks different, he says what it means is that im avra ki kvar nimtzak bekatuv or b'makom im או נודע כי שור נגחו או הודע אליו חטאתו. Right, so in other words, he's trying to tell you that this word im, which was in the words of the Rambam, it can have several meanings. The simple meaning of the word im is if. But then it can also mean when. Like the word ki, same thing. Okay, so we'll see how that works. So he says, then he brings another opinion here. We'll try to figure all that out. So it brings another opinion, another explanation. Rabbi Yosef Pasi כתב שיש לחלק בין שינוי להעברה. So he says we have to differentiate between change and transfer. Two different ways of describing. ששינוי הוא שינוי אבל. So he says change is change, but העברת כל הצורה. But when it comes to changing, transformation, right, that's the other way of saying it. That means like it's totally different, like looks totally different. That's what he's saying. וזה נראה שדקדק בלשונו בתחילת כתב. So it seems like he says that he deduced in his language. In the beginning, he wrote im yesh beptitim kazait. He said that if there are in these pieces kazait, or shenekar shem pat, or the other way is that you can recognize that you can still recognize that it's bread. But only shtanat surata didn't really change the way it looks. Sheratzono amar im yesh Ptitim kazait. So he wants to say that if these crumbs have each one kazait, shinui ma, even though there's a little bit of a difference there, or she'en b'hem kazait, or the other way is that it doesn't have kazait, but right, ela she'en b'hem shinui klal. There's no change at all. V'nikra she'en pat. So therefore we can see that it's bread. This is why you use double language. Shenekar she'en pat. That it's recognizable that it's bread. ולא נשתנה צורתה, and right, the appearance didn't change. רוצה לומר שניכר היטב ולא נשתנה כלל. That means that it didn't change at all. It's like totally recognizable. מברך המוציא, then he blesses המוציא, אבל אם אין בהם כזית, but if it doesn't have כזית, אף על פי שלא עברה, even though it didn't transform, מכל וכל, at all, אלא שנשתנה, rather it changed, or let's say even though there's a kazait there, if it changed totally, transformed, bishul by way of the cooking. So it says that the cooking, right, can make a transformation in the way the thing looks. Shebilisha lo shayach ki im shinui. So it says when it comes to kneading, right, only like a change would be relevant to say omnam bebishul, but it says when it comes to cooking shayach shinu, then it will be relevant to say that it changed, transformed. Levad keshe bishul chalash, when it's cooked, it's the cooking is weak. Omnam keshehu chazak, but if it's strong, shayach havara, then it's relevant to say that it got transformed. Hatzura, the way it looks, the appearance. Hatzura mikol v'chol altogether. Ve'az afilu keshiyeh b'petitin kazait, and then even if these crumbs will have a kazait, mevarech borei min hamazon, it's going to be mezonot. Ve'lo hamotzi, not hamotzi. ונמצא לפי דרך זה שהשווה הרמב"ם בישול למרק. So he says, comes out, according to this approach, he says, comes out that the Rambam equated cooking to soup, broth, בצד, וחילק ביניהם מצד. So on the one hand, he equated them, on the other hand, he differentiated between them. Hishvum beshinui amshutav benehem. So he says that he equated them in the change, which is similar to both of them. Vechilkam be'avara, but he differentiated between them regarding the transformation. Hanim said bishul, which happens in cooking. Velo berisha b'marak, and not when you knead with soup. So he says, he testifies, this rabbi, that this question was asked in the yeshiva Ma'or Golat Ariel Agaon, right, of this rabbi, Ma'arav Yitzchak Avuhav, right, and there was a big crowd of rabbis there. ושל סופרים, ובכללם הנשר הגדול רבי יצחק אברבנאל. So he says, he says the Abarbanel was also there. Okay. So you can see where this was, right? This was in Spain. Right? So Abarbanel over there was a big shot. He was also a big shot in the government as well. Okay, so yeah, right, ועיני כולם הוכשר דרך זה יותר מכל מה שפרשו שם, וגם הרב הגדול מהרב יהודה שושן, another one, right? This rabbi also. Piresh, can you also explain like that? ואני בעוני, okay. So it says, my humble opinion, ראיתי שאף על פי שפירוש זה הוא המדויק בלשון הרמב"ם, so even though he says, I feel that this is the proper way to understand the Rambam, the more accurate way. שבתחילה כתב לשון שינוי. First he wrote the language of change, ובסוף כתב לשון הבראה, and then transformation, ואין לחילוקים אלו עיקר בגמרא. So it says, but these nuances don't have any source in the Talmud, to make a differentiation like this. Okay, let's see. לכן, נראה לי דהכי פירושו, it says, therefore he says, I think this is the way to explain it. הפת שפיתת אותה פיתים ובישלה, so he says, right, that the way it is like this. If a person made bread and crumbs and then cooked it, right? He broke it up into crumbs, cooked it, or lasha, or kneaded it, והתחיל לפרש מה דסליק מיניה, and he began to explain what comes out of this. דהיינו im lasha, that if he kneaded it, ולפיכך לא הוצרך בו אלא חדא דתיבותא. So therefore, it was only needed to have one condition. דהיינו שבפתיתין כזית, that there should be kazait in the crumbs. על פי שנשתנה צורת הפת, even though, right, it looks different, או שניכר שהן pat, or it's recognizable that it's bread, על פי שאין בהן כזית, even though there is no kazait there. מברך המוציא, right? So in other words, let me just explain to you this in simple English. Right? Because it's a little bit complicated, this whole thing here. So what he's trying to say is like this, right? That just to recap the whole idea, right? What are we talking about? We're talking about you have a person who made bread, right? Or whatever, he bought the bread, whatever it is, right? And then he crumbled it into pieces, right? And then after that, he cooked it. Question is, right, what is the blessing for that? Is it hamotzi or is it mezonot? That's the whole question over here. So you would think, right, that since it's bread, so it should be hamotzi. Yeah, what's the question, right? But no, what happens over here is that even though it was bread, but now that he crumbled it into pieces, and then he cooked it. So he did two things over here, right? One is that he changed the size, right? That's one thing. Small pieces, whatever. And also, in addition, he also changed the form, right? Of the structure of the bread by way of cooking it. So now the question is like this: you've done two things now to this bread, right? Number one, you've cut into small pieces, broke it into small pieces, crumbled it, whatever you want to call it, right? You crumbled it up, and then, right, you also changed the way it appears by cooking it. So that already makes it into a different type of food, which takes it out of the designation of bread. Becomes like some kind of a, snack dessert kind of thing. Not really anymore bread for the sake of a seudah, for a meal. So the question is, right, do we require both these conditions in order to make it into mezonot? Or even one condition is enough, right? Means to say that as long as it has a kazait, that's already going to be hamotzi. There's nothing to talk about. Or on the other hand, we could say that since the appearance changed, right, and now it doesn't look like bread anymore, it's not recognizable. So therefore, that should also make it mezonot. It affected you to that. So two conditions that we have. Okay, so the question is only one or both conditions do we require? Okay, so that's pretty much the summary of what we're saying here. So these rabbis, who had this meeting over there, right, in Spain, whatever it was, they were deliberating about this issue. That's what they were doing. So he's bringing the account, about this. So what was the issue? The issue, they're all deliberating about one thing, which is, right, how to understand the words of the Rambam. Oh, that's the whole thing. The rabbis love, deliberating about the Rambam. it's, it's like a favorite pastime of the rabbis.
At least
So,
he doesn't have his own script like Rashi.
oh, okay, okay. All right. Yeah, okay. So, anyway, right, interesting thing, by the way, since you mentioned this thing, the Rambam's work, the main work, the Mishneh Torah, which is the halachic work, it's actually, it may not be what people think because it was originally written in Arabic, this work. And then it was translated into Hebrew by somebody. So the original text was Arabic. Why did it happen this way? Because the Rambam was living in Egypt, so right, that was the language of the land, so that's why he wrote it in that language. Right? So why do I mention that? Because when you translate something, kind of like changes the meaning sometimes a little bit, So, but nevertheless, the rabbis were very particular, to deduce the precise meanings of the words of the Rambam, although that it's a translated work, basically. Yeah. Okay, whatever. So, but Rashi, right, as you said, he wrote in Hebrew everything, right, the original language, right, whatever. It's half Hebrew, half Aramaic, whatever, right? Just like all the works of the sages. But he had that special script, as you said. It, but the Rambam had that special language, which was Arabic. So that was also something unusual with the Rambam. Okay, whatever. Anyway, right, so והדר מפרש מאי דפתח בבנו אם בשטר לפי חכמם, זה ניגוד מובזן. מה שנקרא שהוא פת או עברה צורת פתרת בשיעור, מי שיש בו כזית מברך בורא בני מזונות, למד מה שכתב ובבא דלעשה במרק בהיא דחביצה, הוא קרא בששת, דאמר אף על פי שאין בפירורין, כזית מברך המוציא וכרבה דאמר, והוא דאיקה עלי תוריתא דנהמה, כדברי המפרשים, דחביצה היינו שלוש הפירורין, במרק בלי בישול, דרבה לא מצריך דלהבה עלי תוריתא דנהמה. So, right, אלא בדלת בהו כזית, אבל eat beu kazait. So it says, so what are we talking about? If it doesn't have a kazait, they're small pieces. So then we say it's mezonot. But if it does have a kazait, even though it doesn't look like bread, so meaning what? The cooking has already altered the appearance of this thing. It still doesn't motzi anyway. So yeah, that's pretty much the way we paskin, more or less, if I'm not mistaken. We'll see in the Shulchan Aruch in the end. המוציא הוא כמו שכתבתי לאל, ובה שנייה למדה מנתניה, הכוסס את החיטה, מברך בורא פרי אדמה, תחינה, הפעה, צחנה ובהפעה ובשלה, בזמן שהפרוסות קיימות, מברך המוציא. So he brings this right over here. Lamed Zayin Amud Aleph, right, which is in Brachot, and it says there that a person who snacks on wheat, right, like just eats it as a snack. So we're talking about like whole wheat, just eating it as a snack. Mevarech borei pri adama. So what's the blessing on that? Borei pri adama. Tachana afal bishla, but if you grind it up, right, and then bake it and cook it, right, bisman she pusot kaimot is if the crumbs are still existing, mevarech hamotzi, then it's going to be hamotzi. Because as we said, right, you have more than kazait, the shalosh brachot and birkat hamazon. Ve'im ena prosot kaimot, but if you don't have the size, right, of hamotz, the kazait, mevarech borei min hamazon, you're going to bless meron min hamazonot, ubracha achad min shalosh, and then the al michya. Umfarash Yerushalmi explains in Yerushalmi the prosot kayamot tainu. So it says, so what does that mean that the crumbs are still existing? Hainu sheyesh ben kazait. We said, right? That means it has a kazait. That's what it means. But Sovei Rambam, so the Rambam holds shefa pi sheyesh ben kazait. So the Rambam says, even though it does have kazait, bainan de lahave behu torita dehama. So it says also we require, right, that it should look like bread. The nahama me'achar shehen mevushalot. Since it's cooked, right? So in other words, Kanal. So telling you Bet Yosef, right, that according to Rambam, apparently we require both conditions, right? Which is that it should have a kazait, and also it should still look like bread, right? So let's give an example for this, right? As we said yesterday, what about French toast, right? So the truth is, French toast does look like bread, right? Even after you cook it with with the pan, whatever you fry it up, still looks like bread, So that definitely would qualify according to Rambam, right? That would be hamotzi. Um, that's French toast. But there are other things which are similar to that, which are going to have a different blessing. For instance, right? What about waffles? What about pancakes? What happens with that? What about donuts? What happens with these things? So the truth is that all these things that I mentioned, all three of them, they are mezonot. And why is that? It's not really in the category of what we're describing here, which is a French toast, which means that you first made bread and then you crumbled it right up, make it into pieces, cut it into pieces, and then cooked it, right? That's not what pancakes are. That's not what waffles are, right? So what is pancakes and waffles? That means you're making some kind of a batter, right? Which has inside there flour. And then you fry it, right, in the pan, whatever, or on your skillet, right, whatever. So that's going to be definitely mezonot. Definitely not going to be hamotzi, right? Why is it not hamotzi according to what we described? The reason would be is because first of all, it's not white, dough, right? It's not, it's got flavor in there. It's got some oil in there and eggs and right and sugar, God knows what else, right? So it's got all that stuff in there, pancakes, waffles. So definitely it's not going to be hamotzi, that's for sure. So what's going to be the final blessing for these foods? It's going to be ala michya. Now the question is like this, right? If you eat, 4 egg size, right, of this stuff, are you gonna do hamotzi and birkat hamazon, like we said regarding cake and stuff like that, or crackers? So the answer is that there is a machloket actually about this in the later authorities. So what is the machloket? Machloket is, since these foods are not baked, they're fried, right? So some say that any dough which is fried is not hamotzi, even if you eat a lot of it. So according to that opinion, no matter how much you eat pancakes or waffles, right? It's always going to be um, it'll never get to the point of a meal with the Birkat Hamazon because it's fried. But here's the thing, right? Tell you something interesting about this. That since I came to America, I started doing that American thing, which is like going to Costco, whatever, buying stuff at Costco. Right. So Costco, has has this these waffles, these Eggo waffles, right? They're kosher. So what do you call it? The question is, what do you do with that? How do you bless on that? You know? So originally what I thought was, I made a mistake kind of, right? Guilty as charged. Right? What was the mistake? I thought that those Eggo waffles are just like pancakes. So therefore, I was thinking, even if I eat like four of those, which is like four eggs already for sure, and then some, right? I thought that that would not be Birkat Hamazon and Motzi. Why? Because it's fried. But the truth is, then I looked into it. I looked at some videos. Apparently, they don't fry that stuff. These waffles, these Eggos. So how do they make it? They bake it in the oven. That's what they do. They're baked. They take the batter, and they put it into that, right, that special shape, whatever, right, whatever I call that, right, the mold, whatever, right, and they pour it into the mold. So and then they put it into the oven, and it gets baked. So really, those waffles are not fried. So therefore, comes out the Eggos, right? These waffles are not, if you eat four of them, you're gonna have to say Birkat Hamazon, and wash your hands and everything, because that's like a total meal. Uh, so then once I realized that, then I stopped buying them, because I said, what do I need this for? I'll just have some bread. What's the point of? So it kind of defeated the purpose, whatever. Uh, but pancakes for sure, right? That are made in the pan, they're fried, right? Nobody bakes pancakes, right? This I never saw in my life. Right, so then for sure, right? It's never gonna be Birkat Hamazon Hamotzi, right? It's never gonna become like that. No, even if you have five of them or more, right? Whatever. I don't want you to get fat. Right? Take it easy. Don't eat too much. Send it to me instead. I'll eat it. I'll eat it. Okay, so whatever, right? Whatever you leave over, send it to me. Okay, so anyway, I'm being serious, right? So therefore, right, that's the way it is. Yeah. So now, what about donuts, right? What's with that? So donuts, right? Most of the time, your average garden variety donut is fried in deep oil, deep fried. You know, but then what happened was that when I was living in Israel, right? You know, I get a chance to see there's like a bakery, in Israel, like in Jerusalem anyway, right? I don't know if it's all over the country, but it's called English Cake Bakery. Very good stuff they have there, So anyway, right, this English cake, uh, they have donuts there, and they're really, really high quality donuts, like good stuff. But one time, I happened to go into the store, the bakery, and I saw what they're doing, how they're making these donuts, and it's not exactly what I thought. Apparently, right, these donuts, they bake them in the oven. That's what they do. They don't. It's not really fried donuts. These donuts, and that's why they taste even better. They're like really, really good, like gourmet donuts. Whatever, right? Whatever you want to call it. So therefore, since they're baked, right, those are gonna be, if you eat a lot of them, they're gonna be already a meal. And you're gonna have to make hamotzi and birkat hamazon and something like that. So, but if it's just you're talking about your garden variety, fried donut, that's never gonna be hamotzi and birkat hamazon because it's fried. So, just good to know these things. These are practical stuff. Like we eat this stuff all the time. These things, and we have to know what to do. You and also, in Brooklyn, they have like very high quality, kosher bakeries over there, which they also make like really good donuts. Uh, so I wouldn't be surprised that those are also baked because they're just too good, to be fried. They taste too good. So I guess the same thing would apply there as well. So meaning what? If you have like more than two of those, because they're very large, they're humongous. So you probably have to turn that into a meal. It- There's also a company, which is famous here in New York, bakery, as a kosher bakery, which is called Entenmann's. So Entenmann's also makes donuts, and but they're definitely not the kind of donuts you buy for like Hanukkah, different type altogether. So I think that those are probably also baked. It feels like that they're baked. I have to look. I could probably find out, regarding that, what the manufacturing. But they sell this product like in supermarkets, and everywhere. So it's like a very famous thing over here in New York. I'm not really sure if it's outside New York also, but
They have a thing called hot air frying now too that they use on some things that tend to be less greasy.
right, right, yes, yes. I'm not really sure if they do donuts with that, but not really sure about that. But anyway, right, I'm not really familiar with it. But anyway, right, that's the thing. So it hinges on these factors, these kinds of foods, as we described. So if you follow these rules that I delineated, you will come up with the proper right bracha for each food. You'll know what to bless on that. Okay, so let's see Shulchan Aruch, and we'll see what the bottom line is here regarding what we talked about here, which is more like the French toast, and the matzo ball kind of thing. So this was Yud. Okay, so let's go to Yud, Shulchan Aruch. So now you were saying that we were reading the tours. So I'm just gonna go back there and see if we finished everything. Because I don't want to miss anything, right? Before we go Shulchan Aruch. Good idea to check, just in case. You never know. Maybe we missed something there. Yeah, so the Torah seems to paskin not like the Rambam. He doesn't require both of these conditions. Only one of them, which is the issue of the size, right? Kazait or not kazait. But in terms of the way it appears, the appearance, he doesn't seem to regard that very, 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 very strongly. So okay, so Yeah, I guess we should read a little bit more in the tour here. But you know what? Let's see Shulchan Aruch, and if we need to, we'll come back to this. I'm not really sure if it's this halacha or the next halacha. Okay. Right. So it says here like this: Chavitza, danu peru lechem shenitbakim yachad. Right. So we have this word chavitza, right? So we said, what is that? It's like, you know, breadcrumbs which have been stuck together by way of soup, whatever, broth. Im nitbashel, if it was cooked, he says, im yesh bem kazait. If they're kazait, fapisha enbo to lechem, even though it doesn't look like bread. Mevarech hamotzi b'kat hamazon. Right. So in other words, you see, right, that we don't really care if it looks like bread or not. Doesn't really matter. But if they don't kazait, even though it does look like bread, eno mevarech ela borei min hamazonot. He blesses the mezonot. ברכה אחת על המחיה, בן שלוש. ואם אינו מבושל, oh, so that was the first option, right? Good. Now we have a second option, option number two. That what? It was never cooked. אלא שהוא מחובר על ידי דבש, right? It was just stuck together, with honey, anything like whatever, or broth, soup. אם יש בפרוסות כזית, מברך עליהם ומוציא. If there's, right, these pieces have kazait, doesn't motzi. Afilu and lo tor lechem, even though it doesn't look like bread. Ve'im em bem kazait, if they don't have kazait, im yesh bem tor lechem. So then, if they look like bread, dainu shehu nekar ve'adua shehu lechem. You can see, right, that it's still bread. The texture, the shape is there. Mevarech alav b'motzi u'b'kat hamazon. You're going to do a motzi u'b'kat hamazon. Ve'im bom tor lechem. It doesn't have, right, the appearance of bread. Mevarech boreh mine mezonot. Then he's going to do mezonot ubracha אחת על המחיה, בן שלוש. ואם אינו לא מבושל ולא מחובר. So what about if it's not this or that, right? In other words, it wasn't cooked and also it wasn't stuck together. Just basically what you have is pieces of bread, crumbs, or big crumbs, whatever. אלא מפורר דק. It's just, right? It's just crumbled up into very small pieces. Even though it doesn't have kazait, doesn't look like bread. So then it's going to be hamotzi, right? So why is that? Even though these are very small crumbs, right? But the thing is that even though they're very small, but nothing has been really done to it, It wasn't cooked. It wasn't stuck together with anything. So basically it's the same bread that it was before, just smaller pieces, So that doesn't change the blessing, So it's still hamotzi, as it was before. So let's read this again one more time, okay? So make sure we got all the stuff. We got all the details here going on. I guess we'll stop there. I bored you enough today, right? Okay, so here we go. So, chavitza diayno perim lechem. Again, we have these, right, breadcrumbs, right? Usually, in America, when we say crumbs, we usually mean like very small, but these could be like quite large, right? Like, as we said, they have, they're kazite. So it's not the usual breadcrumbs that we usually, talk about. But anyway, the point is, that if they were stuck together, right, made into something like a nice big, glob, right? So by way of broth, soup, whatever, right? So he says, if it was cooked, this thing, right? Like French toast, like right matzo balls, as we said, right? Im yesh behem kazait, if they have kazait, so what does that mean? Each crumb is a kazait. Afal pi she'en bo toar lechem, even though it doesn't look like bread. Why wouldn't it look like bread? Because the cooking has changed it, has altered it already. Mevorech hamotzi, so he's going to do hamotzi, ubirkat hamazon. He's going to do hamotzi and birkat hamazon. As we learned right last time, yesterday. So now we're going into the other right option, which is doesn't have kazait, right? Then what? Even though it does look like bread, right? So that will be what will be an example of that, as we said right yesterday. Croutons. You can see that they look like breadcrumbs, right? They could be a little bit on the larger side, like a pea size, whatever, or more, right? Or double, or double that. And so they look like bread. You can see they're breadcrumbs, but the problem is they don't have kazait. So therefore, what's going to be, right? They're not. And then Alamishya. Okay. Um, but let's say it wasn't cooked, Now we're going to a different option, right? Which is the first option was that it was cooked. Now we're talking about it was not cooked. So then what? It was just stuck together by way of, something sticky, like honey, like broth, soup, whatever it is. They stuck it together. So there, if they have kazait, it's going to be hamotzi, even though it doesn't look like bread. So that's like the same thing as we said before, right? The first option, the first right the situation variation. So that's but so if they don't have a kazait, the other option, im yesh behem torah lechem. So if they do look like bread, right? You can see that it's bread, So mevarech al hamotzi uberkat hamazon. Then it's going to be hamotzi uberkat hamazon. But if they don't look like bread, they already have a different right structure, texture, whatever. You can't recognize it that it looks like bread at all. Mevarech boreh minei mezonot. They're going to do mezonot. וברכה אחת על המחיה, right, מעין שלוש. ואם אינו מבושל, now that was option number 2, right? Now the final option. Let's say it's not cooked and it's also not stuck together, right? Nothing really. Just a bunch of crumbs. It's just, crumbled up. Even though there's no kazait there, right? And it also doesn't look like bread, still going to be hamotzi. Why? Because you really haven't done anything to it, just broke it up into pieces. So what? It's still the same substance as it was before. Has not been altered, just because of the fact that you broke it up. So therefore, the blessing remains the same, right? That's it. Okay, there you go. So I guess we'll stop there. I hope you understood I hope you followed me. If you have any questions, let me know. Otherwise, we'll stop here and we'll continue Bezat Hashem tomorrow. Thanks for coming. Be blessed with wealth and health and happiness. And Laila Tov, Chazak Baruch. And keep praying for the salvation of Israel and mankind. We'll see you tomorrow. Laila Tov, Bezat Hashem. All the best.
Amen. Kavod Harav. Thank
Thank you, Rabbi.
All of that.
That's all.
God bless.